Okay. Welcome everyone to Political Science 501, Enter the Graduate Study of Politics. Tonight we have Dr. Brandon. Okay, I know this, but
They're
this
Bolte.
will
Yeah.
steal it.
Yeah.
Is it Bolte or Bolt?
Bolte. Yeah.
Bolte.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dr. Brandon Bolte is
Mhm.
going to be with us tonight. So first one, tell us something about your early upbringing. Where were you born? And what was life like there?
Yeah. So I was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So there's Davenport, not too far away. I grew up mostly in a suburb of Des Moines, Iowa, just north of Des Moines. It was a moderate sized, kind of pretty standard suburb, right? It was economically pretty middle class. My parents commuted to work in Des Moines. My family has a lot of teachers in my family background, so I had a pretty quiet upbringing, I suppose. I went eventually then to college in Missouri at Truman State University, and then did some traveling. Went to grad school at Penn State. But yeah, that's kind of my life history. Again, it was kind of quiet growing up there. It was fairly, I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to, I don't know, a lot of it was pretty homogenous community socioeconomically speaking. And so the traveling that I did actually kind of helped me learn a little bit more about the world. I'm really glad that I did it, and sparked my interest in politics, especially.
All right. Well, I think you kind of covered number two. Um, when did you know that political science was a path for you, and who most affected your decision to pursue graduate school?
Yeah, so I was a when I started my undergraduate degree, I went in thinking I I wanted to be a doctor, like a medical doctor, but I had always been interested in politics, campaigns, that kind of stuff, current events. And so I thought, well, I'll do like a double major in political science as my for fun major. So then very quickly I realized, well, I don't really like biology. I don't really like chemistry. And if I have this other major that I think I'm doing for fun, why don't I just make that my focus? So that's what I did. So I stuck with that. And then eventually I just took a course called Peace and Security with a professor that I got along with really well. And there were a couple of theories, some ideas, some puzzles really that really spoke to me. I had a couple of class periods in that course where I just kind of walked out of the class just simmering in my own head. And it was those kinds of questions that then ultimately motivated me to want to study political science kind of long term. As part of that journey too, I'll say we also had to take like a quantitative methods course. And most people in my degree program dreaded that course and were very afraid of it. And it was one of those courses where people took it and realized, oh, political science isn't what I thought it was, right? I thought I was going to just be learning about campaigns or something. But there is a way to study politics scientifically. And one of those approaches can be statistics even. I found that actually quite fascinating. And so that also kind of sparked my intellectual journey and an interest in research. And then beyond that, I did a study abroad program. I spent a little bit of time in Israel and the West Bank. And part of that experience made me kind of experience stories of conflict, right, and violence. And those kinds of stories made me interested in the topic that I ended up kind of pursuing for my career as well. So from there, I knew I wanted to pursue graduate education. I wanted to understand how to study politics scientifically so that I can get a better understanding of how politics works in the world. And so really it was kind of my professors in my undergraduate institution that motivated me to pursue this, and I stuck with it.
Great. Describe some of the courses you teach.
Right now, I am a first-year assistant professor here. So this is my first year at UAS. So I'm still getting to know a lot of the institution and a lot of the students. I've had a great time so far. This semester, I'm teaching just 2 courses. One is a freshman seminar on the global culture of college-age youth. Then my other class is the graduate international relations seminar. This is the course that about 4 of you are in. As you kind of 4 of you could speak to, it is a seminar course that kind of has an international security bend to it, just because that's my area of specific interest. In the future, though, I'm going to be teaching courses on Civil War and rebellion. I'll be teaching that in the spring. That's something that we'll be talking about a little bit later today. I also use quantitative methods in my research, and so I'm going to be teaching the graduate advanced statistical methods course 503 next semester as well, and possibly in the fall again. So if you too are interested in learning kind of advanced statistical tools to test hypotheses and answer questions about the world, you're welcome to take the course. And so, yeah, international security type courses, political violence. In the future, I hope to teach a course on terrorism, but my big interests are in kind of conflict, war and peace, these kinds of things.
All right. How would you describe your teaching style and teaching philosophy?
Well, I like my philosophy in teaching, especially in this kind of age that we live in, an information age, is that my job is to give my students tools to think about the world. And so my view on what we're going to cover in class and the way we're going to talk about things in class is very focused on critical thinking, developing analytical skills, critical thinking skills, while also giving you substantive knowledge that may seem a little bit abstract, but once you walk away from the class, I hope that you can take that and see these maybe abstract theories at work in the world. But the reason that I say this, though, is because I don't want to, especially at the graduate level, be teaching my students things that they can Google, right? I want to be giving you concrete skills where you can Google things on your own, but I want to give you tools to understand the things that happen in the world. And so that's really my focus. What I try to do throughout courses is build a little bit more and more demand of my students to be able, I push them a little bit further and further each week to analyze, critique, and ultimately, I want you to have tools where you can understand literature, understand scientific research, what it means in the world, how things fit together, and ultimately, I want you to know what we also don't know. And so, yeah, that would kind of be my pronged approach to studying, to teaching, especially in the graduate level.
Great. Again, this is one of those kind of overlappy ones, so let me know if you think you've already covered it. Other than the subject matter, what do you want your students to leave your classroom with? Is there anything other than the topics covered which you want them to internalize?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of addressed that, but just to reiterate, I want you to develop critical thinking skills. What I want you to take away from the course is not always just concepts per se, but I want you to also know what we don't know about some specific phenomenon. And I want you to be able to get into a nice intellectual argument with somebody because you understand how to think about an issue rather than just things going on in the world.
That's a good way to put it. Please tell us something about your scholarly interests.
My scholarly interests, as you're going to see today, broadly speaking, international security issues, but my deep passion is civil war and peace. So I'm interested in these conflicts that occur within states. I'm interested in wars between states as well. But what I really like is studying non-state actors that are involved in civil conflicts, whether that be militia groups, rebel groups, and ultimately how they interact with one another. But I'm also interested in the kinds of things that they do during conflict that can affect, for example, the probability of a lasting peace later on, the transition to a more peaceful state, and also kind of civilian experiences under rebel rule.
Well, that's not at all related to current events, so I can't imagine
Not at all.
what you're going to use for examples. Um, what are the contributions to scholarship and to policy or to policy of your work?
Mhm. Yeah, so the work that, again, I'll highlight broadly speaking today, my Civil War research is really trying to unpack interactions between violent groups. And ultimately, I think it's important, there are important things to understand because these processes that happen during conflicts help explain how and why they are going to end. These conflicts are going to end. I usually tell people that, people like me study things like conflict. We're interested in the dynamics of conflict, violence, but ultimately we're interested in these things because we want to understand peace. Those things aren't necessarily just two sides of the same coin, but if we're going to understand peace, we have to understand conflict too. In terms of policy too, some of the new research that I'm working on, I'm hoping to get a better sense of how the kind of experience of civilians under rebel rule can affect ultimately the ability of the state to kind of come back in after a civil war, rebuild trust, build a long-lasting peace. And I think that the current kind of work on this topic oftentimes does not emphasize enough the role that civilians play, right, in a durable and lasting internal peace. So yeah, those are my kind of big interests.
Fantastic. If students share your interests, what classes would you recommend they take?
They should take my international security class or my international politics class. If you are also interested in trying to understand the world through statistics, again, I also recommend you taking my 503 class after you've taken 451 or its equivalent. I will say too that a lot of the work that I do, just because I enjoy using statistical tools, I oftentimes think about the forests rather than the specific trees. And that's not to say that the specific trees in the forest aren't important, but I like to find those kind of big patterns and then look at the trees to see if they fit, right? And so if you're interested in the forest, I can give you tools to teach that, or to learn about that, whether that's through theory or through quantitative methods.
All right, final question.
Mhm.
Recalling your experiences as a graduate student, what advice would you give to our MA students?
Um, the key to graduate school is finding balances. That is, I apply that to both time management, right? Making sure that you're finding time to focus on your work, but also giving your time to rest. But it's also a balance between exploring new things that you don't know anything about, whereas trying to find things that you want to specialize in. This is an opportunity when you're in graduate school to just soak in new knowledge, and ultimately, again, based on the way that I think about teaching, soak in new ways and practice new ways of thinking about the world. And so the key then is making sure that you're finding that balance where between specializing, getting a broad experience, but also finding what it is that you're interested in, because ultimately the thing that you're really interested in is going to motivate you to keep learning the extra skills that hopefully will benefit you in the long run. As part of an MA program too, you have to think about how this is going to help your career, if that's why you're doing this, if you're doing this for kind of just personal purpose, right? Those things should also motivate the courses you take. But finding balance both in theme and in time management, I think, is really important in grad school.